It is an insight program for the first Friday of the month already? Wow. Where did July go? Yeah, I like July. We had 5 Fridays in July, but now down to 4 for the month of August. The first one of the month belongs to the city of Marshfield, and these days that means the city administrator, Steve Barg, kind enough to join us on the first Friday of the month. And welcome to the month of August already.
It is. It's amazing how fast it's going.
Man, so what, 2/3 of the summer in the rear view? And
yeah,
we got a month to go.
It's just crazy. I mean, I know we say this every year, but everybody looks forward to summer in Wisconsin, but it seems very fast.
Well, you're right. We look forward to it because it is so short, and we put such an emphasis on trying to get out there and enjoy some outdoor stuff. And knowing that we only have this basically, 90-day window.
And you blink and it's gone pretty much, right?
Blink and it's gone. Speaking of outdoor stuff, we had, was that a couple Fridays ago already? Was that 2 weeks ago? We had the opening of the Aquatic Center?
Yeah, and I can't even begin to tell you how popular it's been. I mean, the crowds have been large. The excitement's been just what we expected. Not every day has been perfectly sunny and 85 degrees, but even on the days that have been less than perfect, there's been a lot of folks out there enjoying that new amenity.
A 2-week run now for Vandahay Waters, and it's been a great addition. People, it's the old adage, if you build it, they will come, and they have come.
Yeah, they have, and I realize it's going to close in a couple of weeks. We're trying to keep it open as long as we can through the summer. Because we started late, we had a little bit of a challenge getting lifeguards and folks like that because they were trying to get plugged in earlier on back in the spring for positions that would last throughout the summer and that they knew for sure were going to happen on that timeline. But we'll be open for a couple more weeks, Mike, and we'll start next year a lot earlier. And the buzz will be there once again. People are just loving Vandahay Waters.
Yeah. The opening day, 433 people.
Wow.
The next day, the first Saturday, that would have been the 24th of July, 742 people. And then on Sunday, 1,016 people.
Wow. Think about that for a minute. 1,000 people were out there on a specific day. The only thing that held the crowd to 400 and something that first day was it wasn't even open until mid-afternoon.
Right.
We had kind of a ribbon-cutting grand opening, but the public was not allowed to be swimming until, I think, about 3 o'clock. So
right.
It's been amazing turnout.
So about 2,200 people that opening weekend at Vandahay Waters. Just a great pent-up demand,
Yeah, you've got the whole thing with, obviously, COVID last year, so we didn't even have HEFCO, so people are just excited to be out in the water. But then just how much talk and how much excitement has been building about this. People wanted to see it, and when they saw it, you know what? They wanted to go back.
Yeah, you're right about that. Have you gone off the high dive yet?
I have not.
No?
And I felt really bad that I wasn't here that first weekend. I took a couple days vacation, and I wanted to be out there for the grand opening in that first weekend, and it just didn't happen. But I've heard so many wonderful reports.
Yeah, no, it's great, and people are loving it. Speaking of summer, and, summer hours. This is something that you're trying at City Hall now, summer hours, that a lot of companies do. It's a very common practice in Wisconsin, summer hours. So the city of Marshfield, City Hall is trying a summer hours kind of thing. Fill us in on what's happening.
Well, a lot of communities across Wisconsin, at least quite a few that I've seen, have adopted a summer hours policy, and they have themselves closing on Friday afternoons. And you say, well, what does that mean? Why would they do that? Well, the number of people we have coming into City Hall on a Friday is pretty low, and I gather that that's what they're seeing in other locations. A lot of folks take Fridays off, or at least half the day off, and go to their cabins, their campgrounds, whatever it is. And so we have employees just kind of with less to do now. There's always a lot to do, even if we don't have customer traffic. But the thought was maybe as a recognition of that, and as a benefit to our employees during this time of year when they like to get away a little bit too, we'd go with 9 hours on Monday through Thursday in terms of expected employee work, and then be open only until noon on Friday. Now, employees can work with their supervisors on their schedule, but they have to make sure that they have a 40-hour week. We're doing it for 4 weeks from August 9th until September 3rd. And the goal is to get some data, some real data. How many people came to look for us? They pulled on the front door and they couldn't get in and they weren't happy about it. We'll see that from our cameras. How many people called the council members and staff and said, come on, what's up here? And we'll get a sense if there's any other problems or concerns caused by this too. But then we'll kind of put together a report, bring it to the council on September 14th, and decide whether or not we should look at it for the full summer of 2022, and if so, does it need to be tweaked to address some of the issues that arose?
All right, so you're going to start this on a Friday the 13th.
Yeah, isn't that great? What a wonderful starting date.
Yeah, that's perfect. So you're going to start it on Friday the 13th and then run it through Friday, September 3rd. What will that look like? I mean, it's locked up at noon on Friday, even though people might be inside still working. Are they accessible via, by calling City Hall? I mean, what's this going to look like?
Well, first of all, we're putting a lot of publicity out using WDLB, local newspapers, website, Facebook, all of our various platforms, cable TV, so that hopefully people won't walk into that circumstance where they come down, pull on the door and say, rats, what's happening here? And we'll have some signage too. But we're also going to have things on our phones to let people know what's happening. There will likely be employees still in the building. There's no doubt about it. I anticipate being one of them. There's always a lot to do, but we won't be having the customer traffic. So you may be able to connect with an individual employee, but otherwise, we're going to try this for 4 weeks and see if the customer traffic issue does not warrant us to be accessible to the citizens. I know that doesn't sound good when you say it like that, but like I said, the number of people looking for us on Friday afternoon, and I know this myself, as far as calls or people coming to see me, has been pretty minimal during summer months.
Yeah. No, you're right. Like I said, we're all getting out there trying to do summer vacation type things, especially leaving early for a weekend or something of that nature, which is very common for the 3 months that we have here to do that.
It is. And I'll just say this too. I don't know how your listeners will receive this, but we have a struggle these days trying to provide the pay and benefit levels that we want for our staff. And one of the things that we can do that shows them that we care about them is maybe give them a little bit of the same break that others maybe have in other sectors of the economy, and allow them to get away for a little bit while still putting in 40 hours for the citizens and doing all the work that they're required to do.
Yeah, maybe you can't give them more money, you can give them more time.
Well, it's just one of those things that I think is a good thing if we can do it. And if we can't, if it turns out it creates too many problems, Mike, we won't be doing it in 2022.
Okay, so we'll hear more about it on the 14th of September when you give the report on I guess, how this went. Yeah,
the good, the bad, and the ugly. What did we find out from the public? What did we experience ourselves? Were there any glitches in getting the work done or in keeping the public business moving forward? We'll give a full report.
All right. One of the things that we had in the news, too, this past week is the fact that the city is looking for people to serve on a redistricting committee. Are you still looking?
We are, and we're taking the requests or the interest emails, letters, whatever, through 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday. They can be sent to me directly. People can call me at 486-2003 if they want to talk about what's a redistricting committee, how can I get involved. But we need 2 citizens to join the elected officials who are serving on this committee. It'll be a duration of about 3 months. There'll undoubtedly be 3 or 4 meetings, I would guess. And what they're doing is taking the data that we're about to get from the county, from the 2020 census, and boiling it down in terms of what does it mean to our boundaries, our district boundaries. Let's say you're in District 5 and you're representing the same number of people roughly as District 4, but maybe people have moved in the last year and there's more people living in District 5 than District 4. We need to move the boundary lines to make sure that all districts represent roughly the same number of citizens. And this could happen. People might think that doesn't happen a lot, but we've had a lot of apartments built in this city in the last 5 years. So there may be some shift in terms of where those boundary lines need to be.
Okay, so this is a requirement by state law. You have to do this. It's not like you're trying to change things to favor, anybody or that. I mean, this is a requirement that has to be done.
Yes. In fact, the difference between the council district with the most people and the one with the fewest people cannot be more than 10% off. So you couldn't have, let's say Pete Hendler in District 10 is representing 2,500 people and Tom Butke in District 9 is representing 1,500 people. We can't allow that to happen. So we've got to modify the district lines in order to make sure that they're appropriate and that they balance off roughly, at least, the number of people in every district. And like I said, I'm not trying to presuppose that'll be a lot of work, but I think that there have been a few shifts based upon some of the development we've seen in the last decade.
And so when do you anticipate that committee starting?
Well, first of all, I expect them to be appointed on Tuesday night, which will be 3 council members and 2 citizens at large. Mm-hmm. I would suspect their first meeting will be held in the back half of August, probably maybe somewhere around the 20th or 25th, somewhere in that range. We want to get them together as soon as we can. The first step will simply be to have them get familiar with the data. We'll have our GIS coordinator, he'll have the maps out, and get them acquainted with their mission.
All right, and maybe, like you said, 2 to 3 months, and then, then that information goes to the council?
Yes, I believe they have to approve it, and then it goes to the county and up the ladder. Okay. Yeah, we need to report ultimately to Wood County.
Wood County, okay.
And Marathon County, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, because there is a portion of the city in Marathon County which people always forget. Yeah. It's about, I don't know, how many people?
I don't, but if I'm picturing this right, if the area behind Walmart where some of those apartments are being built, and I'm not sure if that factored into the 2020 census, but it increase it a lot. That northeastern corner in particular has some Marathon County residents.
All right. Anything else on that one before we move? I know we got a lot of topics I want to get to.
Yeah, so. I don't think so, but it doesn't sound glamorous, but we certainly appreciate people coming forward and being willing to be part of that important activity.
Okay. One of the other topics that came up at I think it was the last council meeting, which would have been July, was it 20th?
27th.
I'm sorry, 27th. Yeah, there was a lot on that agenda. One of the things that came up was this idea of remote participation in meetings, Zoom, and it was a huge thing in 2020 for obvious reasons because of COVID, as things sort of got back to normal, most people basically came back to the table, basically came back to the meeting, in-person meetings. But there's this ongoing issue that, some, for whatever reason, choose to do it remotely. Maybe not because of COVID, because they're traveling or whatever. So maybe just talk about this issue, remote participation in council or committee meetings, because it's not just the council. Other people have been doing it at the committee level within the city as well. I'm trying to think of one commission. Boy, I think it's Fire and Police Commission. They meet exclusively online still, I believe.
I don't know if they are now, but they have for a long time.
They did for a long time. So this is an ongoing issue. Where did this come from, and where is it at now in terms of, I don't know, do I use the word allowing remote participation? Because the city, as far as I'm concerned here, or as far as I know, my knowledge is that there is nothing written about this issue anywhere in the city, right?
Correct. There's nowhere in the city code you'll find a reference to having to be present in the flesh. But the presumption has always been, since there's nothing provided for to not do that you're expected to be there in person for all the meetings that you attend. But of course, COVID changed that. The governor put out an order called Safer at Home. In Safer at Home, Mike, it said, we are strongly asking boards and councils to have their meetings remotely in order to minimize the spread of COVID-19. Well, now, the city attorney had talked to me a while ago and said, Steve, as we start coming hopefully out of COVID-19, we need to have a policy. If we're going to let people be on Zoom, there's got to be something that gives some guidance. Is it whenever they want to? Is it only in certain circumstances? But we really need to have something in place, because normally the citizens come to a meeting. If you're on the council, Mike, they expect to be able to ask a question directly of Mike Warren. Now, they still could, but it's a little awkward when it's on a screen and the audio and video might be a little off. So the presumption is in person. But I think there's a desire to allow for something else. The question is, Mike, would it be in all cases, or would it be just restricted to health and safety issues? You're called away on work. Sometimes people can't help it. Their employer says you got to go to Minneapolis for the week, and you want to participate from your hotel. Other family emergencies might come up. We had to put some parameters. I thought the council might be fairly limited with those parameters, but I think they have some flexibility. They even brought up the fact that it saves us a lot of money when our consultants and our attorneys can participate from Madison and Milwaukee. They're not charging us the time and the expense of driving here. So the city attorney right now, as I understand, he's got some information from other communities. He's trying to put together something for consideration that will be what I think he believes they're looking for in terms of allowing it, but maybe having there be some representation of cause that would be acceptable to the body.
Well, and as technology changes, I mean, municipal codes change with, things. I mean, technology is just one example, but there are other things. Technology is not the first thing to cause a change in municipal codes in the country. So I'm sure this is something that will need to be updated with this technology change. Have you checked with, your network of city administrators around the area or state? How many codes are there that have language on this?
I haven't yet. I probably will. When the city attorney indicated that he might have some information, I kind of backed off for the moment to see what he came up with. But I can certainly find out from places like Rapids Point and others what they're doing as we all try to feel our way back. Now, having said that, another topic here, if we get to it later, is COVID-19 itself.
Yeah.
And there's been some resurgence that maybe is people are drawing the blinds and the shades down a little bit more and maybe staying with remote. But there's a point where we're going to have some guidelines as what's acceptable for not being there in person. And you see companies all over, Mike, that have decided Zoom is the way. They're not going to get on a plane and fly to Denver. They're just going to do all their meetings by Zoom. So there's a reason for doing it. But public business, generally people like to see people in front of them that they can talk to. And so we have to have some guidance.
Some guidance. How soon? Really, no timeline on this. It was right. I mean, you and the city attorney and others are looking at this, and will bring something back to the council at some point.
Yeah, this is one of three issues on the meeting you're talking about that I think we'll touch on here later, where I would expect September is a likely time frame to see some response in terms of what the council, or in a case of another department head, is going to bring forward.
Okay. We will see what happens on that one. You mentioned this is somewhat related to, basically it was a COVID-related issue from last year. Again, was it about a month, I think, in 2020, where the city basically suspended all meetings. Nobody met for any reason for about, a 4 to 6 week period?
Yeah, I think you're right. In fact, we directed all committees, unless they had emergency business to conduct, to not have their meetings. And I'm talking at this point things like historic preservation, parks, recreation, and forestry. We just simply felt that unless you had something critical, just skip it. Skip your April meetings of 2020. And that did look kind of weird.
Yeah, you're right. So things got sort of back to normal as we got into May and June.
Yeah.
But again, not everyone came back to in-person meetings. There was a 3 or 4 month stretch, it seemed, where most people, even yourself and other city officials, weren't even going into the council chambers, logging into the meeting from your offices to keep that social distancing thing going for quite a while, actually. Yeah,
if you think about it, our new city hall and the council chambers are beautiful, but the size is not any greater than what we had in the old one, as far as how many people fit with 6 feet apart in the council chambers. So I had directed the department and division heads, if you don't have an item on the agenda specifically that you need to talk about at the podium, stay in your office or your home and participate that way.
All right, mentioned COVID-19. This is all related to that, or a lot of it is, and it's still topic number one on most agendas, especially when it comes to meetings, government operations, access to buildings. Are we going to meet? Aren't we going to meet? Who's going to all be there? How many should be in the room? We kind of let our foot off the gas pedal a little bit. And now it seems to be there's this uptick in cases again. The Delta variant is getting a lot of attention as we get ready to, I guess, go back indoors for the most part for the duration of the winter here coming up. Seems to be a lot more talk about COVID. And it's something that I'm sure you continue to monitor at City Hall, within the city of Marshfield, and within Wood County as well. What's the latest you can give us?
Well, let me add a little bit to what you said. Not only is it a top discussion item at meetings and those kind of things, but family get-togethers, conversations at people's kitchen tables, the whole issue of, if I'm vaccinated, why do I have to put a mask on? All these conversations are coming back up, and they're a little bit dicey. But you're right, COVID-19 cases have been increasing, and due to the Delta variant largely, we've now gotten guidance from the Wood County Health Department. They're in concurrence with the CDC and the State Department of Health Services, recommending that masks be worn indoors, regardless of vaccination status. So I will be presumably be bringing this to the council on Tuesday night. I'm scheduling an emergency management committee meeting for Monday. That would be made up of the two public safety department heads, police and fire, the council president, and me. That's who's called upon under code to meet in these kind of circumstances. And what I'll be looking for on Tuesday night from the council is authorization to take necessary steps, not knowing what that will be. And believe me, I don't want to do more than what's warranted. I'm not trying to impose things that aren't necessary. But we don't know where this is going. There's 2 weeks between meetings, and somebody needs to be authorized to take actions that might be necessary, up to and including closing our facilities. Which again, this is premature, conversation, but we hope it doesn't go that way. We just need to be ready.
All right, so this is kind of new information here. Wood County is now following CDC guidelines. Urging, recommending, what's the wording?
Yeah,
Masks?
I think the word is, recommending or strongly recommending masks be worn indoors. And again, regardless of vaccination status. And that's the issue that I know people are struggling with. I don't know how many city employees have been vaccinated, but I do know that a lot of people feel like if that's the case, why do I have to wear a mask? And yet the spread appears to be occurring even in vaccinated people, that they could get it, they could transmit it, and we're trying to cut this off before it gets much worse, like you've seen in some of the southern states. Right now, Wisconsin's not that bad compared to other parts of the country, but we don't want to end up there.
Yeah, these breakthrough cases, they call them. You get COVID even though you've been vaccinated. And yeah, you're right. Many people are saying, you told me if I got the shots, I wouldn't have to wear the mask. Now you're telling me you want me to wear the mask again, even though I've been vaccinated and haven't had COVID or no symptoms or anything. This is this is going to get real ugly before it gets better. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's really difficult. People trying to follow the rules, and I'm not being critical of the CDC or anybody else, but they get something in their mind. I do this, and then I'm good, and it's hard to do a different message after that. And I certainly struggle in these conversations along with everybody else, but I want to see us do the right thing when we need to protect our health and safety. One of the things that can rub people the wrong way is no matter what the game is, when you change the rules in the middle of the game, people get real upset, and that's what they're doing. They're basically changing the rules in the middle of the game. Well, you said the rules were this going in. Now you're telling us something else, and now we don't know who to believe or why we should believe them. Right. And we know from everything we're hearing that vaccinations, are good, that especially in the area of protecting serious illness, that even if you might contract the disease, it's going to be likely a much more mild course. But you still have unvaccinated people that you want to encourage to get vaccinated, and it's hard when they hear things like this, because they figure, well, then, what's the difference if we're still going to end up all in the same boat? We need to listen to the authorities, and we're also looking for as clear guidance as we can possibly get.
And the other thing related to COVID that we've heard a lot about is COVID, like stimulus money, relief funds, what have you. And the state has gotten a boatload of money. And I know the city has gotten some. There have been expenses related to COVID that all cities, municipalities, counties, townships, you name it, have had to incur because of COVID. What's the city's situation there? Do we continue to get money, or is it something you have to ask for? Like, we've done these things, now you got to reimburse us. And if so, what's that amount? What does that look like now? And where does that money come from?
Well, there's a few different things. First of all, the one that's kind of over, but I still want to recap it, came from last year through the state, and that was reimbursing us directly for expenses due to COVID. So we got $320,000 roughly for expenses we did on everything from personal protective equipment, cleaning supplies, plexiglass. I'm not saying anything that comes up near $320,000, so I'm probably forgetting bigger things, but any expenditures we made that could be tied directly to the pandemic. Now we're into the mode where we've gotten some ARPA funds. That's I'm forgetting what it stands for.
I know, American Rescue and Recovery Plan or something.
Yeah. We're going to get, up to $2 million. We've got $966,000 we put it in the bank. We're going to get a second payment later for $966,000. So it comes up a little over $1.9 million. But even though they give it to us and we put it in the bank, we need to not use it until we can show that we are spending it on eligible purposes. So right now, we've got a team at City Hall of staff people looking at that, laying out the projects and the things that relate to what they want done. Infrastructure is a big one, so we should be able to substantiate that. Other COVID-related costs, things that relate to, could be broadband or wireless or whatever, I think maybe is part of that deal. But trying to figure out eligible expenses, because if we spend the money on something that's not eligible, and then we have to settle up with a report to the feds, and they say, sorry, you have to pay back $250,000. You couldn't do that project under this grant. We will be in a bad place. So right now we've spent not a dime. We're trying to figure out what the eligible purposes are from all the grant paperwork, and but ultimately we'll be able to spend at least some of that, I don't know how much, on projects that will benefit the city and will help the taxpayers, because some of them, maybe things that were going to occur at some point anyway.
Almost $2 million. Wow. So that's a new number. That's an updated number, and happening here just recently. So that comes from the state?
Well, it comes from the federal government through the state. And then, of course, you're probably following a little bit the money that's being talked about for infrastructure. Yep. And, of course, Congress is arguing about that. But that could provide some money for specific projects for state and local roads. I don't know. We're just kind of in a waiting pattern on that one.
All right. City administrator's pay raise is not it's not on the list, not approved.
No, it wasn't called out specifically. Now, there might be some fine print on the last page that I'm still parsing through.
Well, now, that's interesting. I didn't even have it on my list, but didn't the council have your employee review?
They did.
Last go-round here?
They did. They did my review on July 27th at that meeting in closed session. Nick Paschal, the council president, got back with me. We met the other day, and he walked through some things. Here's what you're doing well. Here's what you could do better. It's good. It's good for me to know. I usually have a sense of what the council feels about my efforts, but you don't always know. And out of this comes, some things that they want to give you a big thumbs up, and a couple of things where they say, look, we'd like to see some improvement. I found it helpful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right? It's always helpful when you get, sort of that out-of-body experience where people are looking, you can't review yourself. It's hard to, you're too close to it's hard to see what you're doing and what you're not doing. So, but that's an annual thing anyway, right?
Yeah.
Do it every year. It
is. And two of the words that a lot of people don't like are performance review.
Yeah, right.
But if it's constructive feedback, really most people like that. They like knowing what they're doing well and where they could upgrade their skills, and I found it helpful.
Yeah. See, now around here, performance review is a totally different thing, because they're like, okay, Mike, performance review means we actually need the first word in that set. We need, in order to review, we need performance. So if you could do that first part, that would be great. Then we could do a performance review. That's where I run into problems.
Nice.
So I don't even fill out half the requirement for a performance review. All right. Well, we're with the city administrator, Steve Barg. He is with us, monthly appearance on the WDLB Insight program. And we've got some other things that we want to bring up. But if people have a question or a concern or something, this is their opportunity. They should probably live in the city of Marshfield, right? I mean, if you're listening on the internet,
they don't have to. I mean, people who live outside the city can drive on our roads and have questions and concerns. But city residents certainly applies to some of these issues directly.
Right. And if you're on vacation in Florida or something, don't bother. Hey, what about hey, can someone go by and grab my mail?
Yeah, that won't be happening.
No.
Not with city employees anyway.
All right, 384-2191, and we'll put you through to Steve if you've got a question or concern on the Insight program today here on WDLB.
This will be my masterpiece. A giraffe. A giraffesterpiece. It will go on the fridge.
Hey, Picasso. It's time for your checkup.
But first, my annual checkup. And then, I will be back, giraffe, to color your pants. Marshfield Children's.
The coffee lounge at City Hall. This is very relaxing for a Friday. Our city administrator, Steve Barg, is with us on the Insight program here this morning for your Friday, first Friday of every month. The city administrator kind enough to join us to talk about things happening at City Hall. One of the issues that came up, we go back to the. Let's get rid of the lounge.
I was dozing off.
Well, I was going to say, if I have any more of that, I'll want another cappuccino and a 15-minute break. One of the things that came up at the last council meeting was, and I'll just read it because I don't know how else to go into this. Review city's posting of no firearms signs at entrances to City Hall. This has come up again. What's the issue?
It has, Mike. It was brought up back in the fall of 2019. At that time, after a considerably long discussion, the council voted 5-4 to leave the signs up. This really does mirror the debate you hear every time you turn on cable TV news. It's really looked at as a Second Amendment issue to some, a safety issue to others. But the question of whether or not we should prohibit weapons from City Hall. And, you have people on the one side who say, look, I mean, it's just not good to have firearms, in the building. That's a safety concern. Other people say, well, look, bad guys don't read signs. They're not going to. No one's going to come to take a shot at Steve Barg and say, oh, rats, I can't bring my handgun in the building. There's a sign that prohibits it. But they talked about it. They did ask some things to be looked at. The city attorney's looking at it right now, and one of them, believe it or not, is liability. If we have a sign that prohibits weapons in the building, let's take the council for a second. Let's say I'm one of the council members and I wanted to do concealed carry, and I didn't because the sign said no, and somebody were to walk into a meeting and take a shot at me. Would my spouse be able to file a lawsuit? And this might sound weird to some people, but because their husband or wife had been unable to protect themselves. That's one of the issues that the city attorney is looking at. I think ultimately this is going to end up being a political discussion and a political decision, but we want to make sure that we understand the ramifications of going one way or the other on our insurance and our liability.
So that's an issue that, again, it's one of these issues that you sort of are directed to look into and report back to the council at some point here at a later date?
Yeah, I think very similar to what we just talked about a minute ago with remote meeting participation. Probably sometime in September, you'll see this come back. I'll be talking with the city attorney, find out what he came up with, and then kind of forming it into a package to bring back their way. And like I said, I think it's ultimately going to come down to a political discussion more than anything, at whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing to have signage like that on our facilities.
Okay. Yeah, this just recently came up, and like you said, at that time it was basically left as is. No firearms at City Hall right now?
Correct. The interesting thing, though, if you get really political for a minute, that was a 5-4 vote, which is very close. One person was absent, and we've had a couple of members of the council leave and be replaced since 2019. So it's kind of an open-ended question as to whether or not this will have support coming back to overturn that and allow concealed carry, for example.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind, too, that with these close votes, if there is a tie vote nowadays, our tiebreaker, we don't have a tiebreaker. We won't have a tiebreaker until April when we put somebody back in the mayor's office.
Correct. And another interesting point about this is if the council back in 2019 asked me to do a survey of city employees in City Hall, let's find out what they think. Guess how it turned out?
5-5.
Oh, basically.
Half.
I think it was actually like 12 to 11 or something.
Okay.
But
wow.
And the comments I got, the emails I've still got on my computer, kind of mirrored that. Some said, look, I wouldn't feel particularly safe if people in this building, including my coworkers, are all walking around with guns. I'm paraphrasing. Nobody said it Nobody said it exactly like that.
Right.
And others wrote and said, hey, look, concealed carry is everywhere. In schools, well, maybe not schools, churches and other places. It's the law. Why are we trying to restrict that? Especially when the bad guys coming after us, if someone wanted to harm us, they're not reading the sign anyway. So it really is a debate that you're seeing in Wisconsin and the entire United States.
I don't want Steve Barg with a stapler, let alone a gun, right? I mean, the guy's dangerous enough.
I've hurt myself that way more than once, actually.
Yeah, I won't comment on that either. Those are harder to use than they look, those staplers. It's the staple removers I got a problem with. I end up taking out more than the staple. All right. So another hot button issue. I don't know. This keeps coming back, and the council has resurrected this again for I think it was, the third or fourth time now in the city's history this has come up. It was discussed at the July 27th meeting, this idea that Marshfield should have, or maybe we should have, a chicken ordinance. Here it is. Discuss possible ordinance change to allow chickens in the city of Marshfield. Walk us through this one, and where is this issue at right now, and where is it headed, and what should people know about, what might be coming for the city of Marshfield?
Well, Mike, before I came to Marshfield, I was the city administrator in Ripon in east central Wisconsin for 13 and a half years. I came here in January of 2011, and guess what the first issue was I walked into?
Chicken ordinance.
Should we allow chickens in the city of Marshfield? And I thought, wow, this is an interesting start. And the vote that time was 6-3 against.
Okay.
Again, one person was obviously missing. Again, a lot of interesting debate, and people look at this two different ways. I sound like I'm talking about the firearms thing again. There's two sides to every coin, right? There's a side that would say, well, look, if you want to have chickens, live out in the country. What's going to be next if we allow chickens? Will it be goats? Will it be whatever? And then there's the other side that says, having a couple of chickens in a little chicken coop behind your house and you clean up after it, is that really going to bother people? What's the big deal? I can have my own eggs, and it's good for everybody. So the one thing I will say about this debate over time is it does seem to be picking up a little bit of steam, at least across Wisconsin. There have been some more communities, including our neighbors. I think Point Rapids and Wausau all have ordinances that allow them under some limited basis. And it was brought up again, I think, in 2017 here, somewhere around that time, and it really didn't go anywhere. It didn't get to first base back then. So, but it has been brought up now. Adam Fisher, one of our council members, said he's hearing from a couple of constituents, it sounds like, again. And there's people who would like to do it, and they're just having a hard time understanding if their neighbors are okay with it and it doesn't cause a big problem, why are we struggling with this? So Josh Miller is going to come back, with a report, a deeper report. He'll have some more information probably about other cities and what their ordinances look like. And if we want to do it, what would our requirements be? And then we'll dive back in again, probably in September, maybe early October, and take a serious look once again at whether to allow chickens.
It will not come back as a proposed ordinance. Is that what they're asking for? Or the council just said bring back more information on what would all have to happen in order to do this?
I'll actually have to look at the video from that meeting.
Okay.
I know that Josh has started taking a look at it as to whether they want to see an ordinance or they just want to see more information about what would be acceptable. Mm-hmm. What it's really going to come down to, whether it's an ordinance format or not, is what would the parameters be? The last time it was proposed, Mike, it was up to 4 maximum. There was a description of what the coop had to be like, how far it had to be from property lines, and I suspect that some of those same things will be the really meat of whether or not this is going to go anywhere.
Yeah, it was first brought up, like you said, in 2010.
Yeah.
Sustainable Marshfield, if people remember that name, brought this up. And it was kind of a movement then, and kind of still is, People want to know, where their food comes from. GMO's an issue. It's a phrase that you hear a lot, and growing your own and this and that. And like you said, our neighbors all have this. Wausau, Point Rapids. Not that doesn't mean that we have to. It just means that It is a growing trend. And like you said, it was voted down then. July. Let's see here. I was just looking for the next time this came up. I know there was an effort it came up one other time, and then last year, actually. I think Tom Budke brought it up.
He did mention it.
And when the mayor said, okay, any debate or discussion, and nobody said anything, and it just died. It just went away at that point. So now it's coming back a year later.
That time, it not only did not get to first base, it didn't get out of the batter's box.
Right. It struck out.
It struck out totally. And again, I think there's interest in this. We've seen, and I've heard of people wanting to do this. The slippery slope argument might be a little bit overplayed. I don't see people coming forward and saying that they should have goats and other types of farm animals, but it does make people wonder. And there will be a complaint. Somebody living next to one of these individuals will raise their hand and say, I'm not sure I like this. What about the smell? What about so we have to make sure we're looking ahead.
Yeah. You're right, because we've got problems with dogs. You know what I mean? We've got
We do.
constant, ongoing dog-related complaints.
And cats. I mean, if you remember earlier this year, we talked about this trap, neuter, release thing to try and reduce the number of wild cats.
Right. And somebody even at the meeting said, and now what happens if, we've got chickens running around and we don't have a maps for chickens.
That'll be the next thing.
I mean, does the Marshfield area pet shelter include, are you covered for chickens out there? It's like, what next? How far do we take this? There are legitimate concerns, though.
There are.
And people, there are always that, the NIMBYs out there, not in my backyard.
Well, the funny thing about government, and I've been in government for far too long, as I always say, since I was in my mid-20s, but is that things that seem harmless, you got to remember, there's going to be a complaint. Yeah. Are you ready for it? Can you justify what you did? So that's what makes us as conservative as we are before we go into these new initiatives.
So that's coming back at some point this year yet? Maybe?
Yeah, you'll see this later in the fall. Okay. And I need to talk to Josh a little bit more about what he's doing and kind of refine what he's coming back with. But sometime this fall this will be returning.
Okay, but in time for Thanksgiving? Oh, no, we want the eggs, not the actual.
No, yeah, we're not talking.
Yeah, and that's one of them. No butchering. You're not. This isn't for the chickens. It's for the eggs.
Correct.
Right.
That is the intent. Is having your own eggs.
Good
That's right.
Lord.
Yep.
We don't need to be butchering chickens.
No.
Let alone. Okay. All right. Well, so the chicken ordinance again. This will be debated here at some point in the near future, I guess is the point.
Yeah, it's funny to think of these issues running together. Firearms and chickens. That just doesn't sound like we ought to be having those on the same agenda. But these are issues that we're trying to work through.
Yeah, well, I'm sure these are common, right? City of Marshfield, not the only city dealing with issues like this across not only the Badger State, but the country as well, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, and every time you think about concealed carry, you realize that there's issues that are going to pop up that someone says, okay, that's great, but are there limitations? Are there places where someone should not be allowed to possess a firearm? And those kind of discussions continue onward.
Never a dull moment at City Hall, is there?
Very rarely.
Remember when there used to be?
Yeah. Oh, I would long for those days again. I mean, that music you were playing earlier made me think of those days, actually.
Right? Yeah. We hearken back to, easier times at City Hall. Now it's you're right.
My desk hasn't seen my feet on top of it for a long time.
Guns, okay. COVID, vaccines, chickens, Zoom. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff.
The full gamut.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's take a break, and we'll come back and start to wind down our Insight program. City Administrator Steve Barg, kind enough to join us here on the first Friday of the month, as he does every month here on Insight. And we'll have more of our program after this.
Kids don't belong in hospitals. She belongs at home, blowing bubbles or chasing butterflies.
Kids shouldn't have heart conditions. You should have puddles to play in and imaginary villains to fight.
Kids don't belong here, but sometimes they have to be here. And while they are, we encourage their childhood stay childlike.
Hey, Mike, can I jump into something before we get back to the topics at hand?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I just want to say thank you to you for, ever since I've been here, 10 and a half years, you've been a great person to meet with, to talk about city business, whether it's been programs of this nature or covering meetings, after meetings, news conferences, the whole thing. And I can't say enough good things about how fun you are to work with, not just professional, but that we have a good time and we can laugh. So thank you, and best wishes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we've had some fun.
We have.
And I remember I went up to your office, I think the first week.
Probably.
I don't know if it was first day. First week you were on the job, though.
Yeah.
And I came up and said, okay, who's this new guy? And let's break him in the right way and show him that, the local media is here to help him and not be adversarial in any way. And we basically just talk about what's happening.
We did a cable TV program where they gave us a CD of outtakes once, and
right.
And I still go back to that once in a while. The outtakes are interesting to say the least.
Yeah, not ready for air or anything like that. But yeah, we used to do that, and had a lot of fun doing it. And here we are now. I guess what could be our last go-round here.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to thank you for everything.
No problem. Glad to do it. I had to do it. It was in the job description. They made me do it. So let's go. We got just a couple minutes left. One thing I want to get an update on, Daniel's Addition update. This is the subdivision, right, that the city is putting in on the west side, I guess?
Yeah, in the area of 5th and Lincoln, and everything's going well. Expectations are still that by late October, we're going to have all the infrastructure in, the streets, sewer, water, and have everything in place to where we can start officially selling the lots. We're still doing pre-sales, so if you are interested, please contact the city and talk with someone about how to possibly get a pre-sale for a lot. But it's exciting, 23 new single-family lots. We've been going through some questions along the way. A couple of issues have come up. People who want to buy and build but don't want to build exactly what the pre-sale agreement calls for. Maybe they want to build it a little bit differently, a little bit smaller. You know, we've had the question of, can I do it without building a basement? Because it does call for basements generally. And we've been working through some of those questions and those requests. But it's going really well. We're getting positive feedback, and we need those homes.
Okay. All right. And I'll call this our lightning round.
Oh, okay. All right.
We'll just touch on these real quick before we wrap up. Clinic property tax claim. I've seen this on council agendas at in the closed session, portion of the meeting, and then they come out in the open session and say, okay, move to adjourn, and that's it, and we hear nothing about it. We've heard a little bit about this issue. And this has been, I don't want to say an ongoing, but, clinic and property taxes have been, synonymous with one another in this community for a long time. Nonprofit, a payment in lieu of taxes has been an ongoing thing. Clinic property tax claim, what is this issue?
Well, the Marshfield Clinic is looking to have two properties declared tax exempt, the two big parcels, 1000 and 1001 Oak, basically their main building and the east wing. And they're claiming that, in fact, they are eligible under the hospital exemption to be tax exempt. And the city is not seeing that right now, but we're all being professional in discussions. The city did deny the request, so now it's headed toward more of a legal action. They filed a claim to bring it in that direction. It's important to the city because there's a lot of assessed value on the line and tax revenue that the city stands to lose. But the Marshfield Clinic has every right to make this request as any other taxpayer does. And we'll go through the process, and both sides have legal representation. We'll see whether or not their argument has merit.
Okay. And where's that at?
Well, they just filed last month, and both sides are now doing their initial responses to one another to the court. These take a long time. I would suspect will be many months down the road before you hear anything formal happening from this. But we need to look at it financially too. If part or all of those buildings were found to be tax exempt, that would cause the city to make some serious budget issues front and center. Those
two properties, main building and east wing, in the tax world for the city, what does that number mean?
It's $112 million.
Whoa.
$112 million of assessed value out of a roughly $1.6 billion total assessed value. So it's about 7%, a little over 7% that would come off the tax roll if these exemptions are granted.
7% of our tax base is two buildings.
Is those two properties.
Wow.
Yeah. And, that includes the land as well as the buildings. But, admittedly, if they get full or partial exemption, and they could get partial, a court could find that, look, these areas of the building are, fit under the hospital exemption. These areas don't. These are more, doctor's offices and rooms that don't qualify. So it could be a mix and match. But any revenue we lose is going to, make our budget process harder. And our budget process is already difficult. We've been dealing with a structural budget deficit now for a couple of years. So, like I said, I respect their right to pursue this. We're hopeful that we're going to be in good shape when it's over. But we'll deal with whatever it comes. And please be listening. People should be aware.
Because otherwise the city, the rest of us have to make that up.
Yeah, there's no doubt that if we were to lose these revenues, we'd be looking at tax increases and or cuts in the budget that could affect services. There's no other way to say that. We'll just let it play out and see where it goes.
Okay. Just a minute or two left here. Contract talks, PD and fire?
Yeah, we're going back to the bargaining table. Usually the police union and the fire union negotiate on different years, but last year we suspended with the police because they were waiting for the outcome of that arbitration case involving the former police officer, Jared Beauchamp. So we're jumping back into the water with them to try and finish out a new contract. At the same time, the fire department, the fire union contract ends on December 31st of this year, so we'll be simultaneously negotiating a new, hopefully 3-year deal with them. That's a lot to be taken on at one time. Usually they're staggered.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and they weren't part of Act 10 years ago, so they still have their unions.
We once had 6 unions until Act 10, and then it quickly reduced to 2.
And those are the remaining 2 still standing.
Correct.
In the meantime, start of the budget process?
Yeah, with all that discussion about how we could be impacted, that won't be in the 2022 budget. There'll be nothing coming out that soon from the clinic case that would affect, I don't think, the 2022 budget. But, we're at a better starting point because of the tax rate increase last year and some other decisions we've made. But it's always going to be challenging. And we're going to do our very best, Mike, to continue services and yet minimize any tax impact. And we're at a much better starting point than we were last year at this time.
Yeah, because now we're under 2021 budget, which has a sizable tax increase in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, the tax increase that was approved last year was a huge piece of getting us to a better place, along with some budget cutting. Right. People may not know this, but we actually reduced our general fund budget expenditures from 2020 to 2021 by dollars. I mean, we actually took it down from $22.5 million to, like 50,000 less than that. So we're actually spending less money than last year, even though supplies go up and costs go up and union contracts and all that. So that gives us a better starting point for 2022.
Okay, very good. All right, we got a lot in. We didn't get to. I think we got to all but one, right?
Wow.
Pay compression team.
Yeah. Do you want to cover that real briefly? How long do we have?
20 seconds.
Okay. This is to look at the compression in the fire and police departments where the firefighters and police officers are getting too close to the people who are management. If you want to incentivize management, you've got to have separation.
And so this pay compression team is looking at that.
Right. How to make sure there's separation enough to incentivize people to want to be lieutenants and deputy chiefs.
Interesting. Okay. We got to them all.
Excellent.
11 topics. 55 minutes.
Yes.
Bam.
Yes.
Good way to go out, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike.
All right, thank you, Steve. City Administrator Steve Barg on the Insight program. He'll be back not September 3rd, maybe. I don't know, it's Labor Day weekend. We'll take a look at schedules and see what happens. Thanks for listening.